I literally exist as a professional because League of Legends made that possible. As much as I give a bunch of trouble to League of Legends, they really did make it possible for me to be successful, and they enabled a lot of people to do careers. And I think more than anyone else, they defined what esports is, and they were the pioneers of that. All right, League of Legends, League 10. Let me pull up all news from League of Legends as I've got here. This was cool. Well, was it? Actually, I'm going to talk about... So here's like the interesting thing about this. So when it comes to Fortnite was an absolutely flawless execution of a business plan. It was actually the best, I think. There's probably... I've never seen an event in gaming history that was as good as the Fortnite event. But I have some concerns with the Riot announcements. One thing that I've been thinking about a lot is I don't know if it was a good idea to release everything at once for League 10, for the 10th anniversary. So that's the one like big marketing thing that I'm like really thinking about right now. It's like, was it smart of them from an earned media standpoint to release everything in what, like right now, right? In one day, because this is the culmination of like what hundreds of hours of the company's work. So that like in one announcement, they did 3 games, a new champion, an esports manager thing, a book, a documentary. So and like, unless you have like a freaking encyclopedia, I don't know if announcing all this stuff at once was a good idea. So, okay, I guess the first thing we'll do is we'll break it down. So the League of Legends 10th year anniversary was yesterday. And just to give like some context into this, League of Legends really, and I thought about this yesterday, I have a special attachment to League. As much as I give a lot of shit to Riot Games, I'm pretty much here because of them. When I started streaming as a full-time broadcaster on League of Legends in 2012, that was like back when we had like a couple thousand concurrent viewers, and I got noticed by League of Legends or Riot Games, and they featured me as a broadcaster. And then as a result of that, I got discovered by Riot, and then that got me into esports, and that got me to where I am today. So I literally exist as a professional because League of Legends made that possible. As much as I give a bunch of trouble to League of Legends, they really did make it possible for me to be successful, and they enabled a lot of people to do careers. And I think more than anyone else, they defined what esports is, and they were the pioneers of that. So I do, like, as much as I give a lot of trouble to Riot Games, and they deserve it, I really do have like a kind of like respect for them and what they've done. Maybe accidentally, but irregardless. So I think that said, right, League 10 was the 10th year anniversary of Riot Game or of League of Legends. And with this were some really big announcements. So the number one announcement was the card game, I'd say, because we can actually see that now. They announced this card game, Legends of Runeterra, which is sort of an Artifact, Hearthstone, Magic the Gathering kind of mix. And we need to look into this game. This is going to be part of this talk. Do you think they define esports more than Dota? I don't know. It's really hard to say. In some ways, yes, though. But the first thing we need to do is we need to do just like a full breakdown. I think is going to be valuable. So let's start with Legends of Runeterra. Legends of Runeterra is a card game that's kind of a combination of Hearthstone, Artifact, and MTG. And as far as I know, it's like a turn-based game. So this is your life totals. This is your mana totals. Your mana goes up every turn, but there's ways to manipulate it. And you switch between attacking, blocking, and defending based on turns with each character. And there's basically rarities of cards. So it's like common, uncommon, epic, and champion. And there's a lot to go into with like Legends of Runeterra. Just for the purpose of this, I'm not going to break everything down. But that's what that is. It's a card game. So after that, they announced a tactical FPS, which is called Project A. And this is a kind of like Counter-Strike type game where you can play like a... You play like a character, and then they announced a new fighting game project, which is called Project L right now. with League of Legends characters. And they also announced an isometric RPG, which looks like a sort of like Diablo type thing. And they showed a couple of screenshots from their fighting games. So we're talking about a card game, an FPS, a fighting game, and an RPG, all in different stages of development. So the card game has been announced that the beta will be sometime in early 2020. The tactical FPS is like coming in the future after that, sometime in 2020, so probably 2021 or something. The fighting game has like no date, and they're probably pretty early in that project, and the RPG probably same thing. So those are the big changes that happened as a result of League 10. And also, though, they've announced like some pretty crazy like media. So there's going to be a League of Legends documentary on Netflix, which isn't that big of a deal. That sounds like really cool, but like there's a lot of people that get documentaries on Netflix, like all of those people that get the cow or like what are the like the vegan documentaries, like a million of those. Like it's not that hard. But one thing that is like actually really crazy is they have like an animated series coming. They have an anime coming, literally called Arcane in 2020. So this is big. They're basically doing their own animated series, and they announced that. And it's going to be a whole story about the League of Legends world. So they're having that happen. Yeah, it's not an anime. I'm sorry. It's an animated series. Okay. And that is actually like their own design, and that's really cool. So that's a really big thing. They're also having an esports manager come, a non-profit Riot Games Social Impact Fund. I didn't know about this. And a lore book coming out. And then there's a bunch of like other changes, but in terms of these are just things that like are happening in game to League of Legends, a bunch of updates. But the two things that I want to focus on for like the purpose of like business is like these two things. So there's a couple of themes here that I think are really neat. One is that League of Legends is building a consistent world. So everything within these games falls into the sort of like Runeterra world. Right? That's the name of the world, right? They're doing a lore book. They're doing a documentary. They're doing a series which is based in the world. The card game is based in the world. The FPS is based in the world. The fighting game is based in the world. And the RPG is based in the world. And this is neat because I think there are a few game studios that do this where they build things like in similar worlds, but nobody that is going to make this this kind of, I'd say, diversity of games, have them all be in the same setting. And what that's going to do is it's going to create a coherent brand. So the FPS is not in the world, but the FPS is of the same style and the same design as the rest of the products. So what I'm saying is like by creating a cohesive world around like a fighting game, an RPG, and a card game, and keeping the sort of like art and the themes the same, what they're doing is they're literally building a brand, and that is like pretty cool. I like that a lot. So that's one thing that I think is really neat. The other thing that they're doing is they're dominating esports titles. I don't know if anybody noticed this, but this is absolutely something that they're doing. So every one of these games is a major esports title. So we have card games, which are major esports. We have FPS, major esports, and more importantly, they're building this FPS in, at least it seems, inspired by the most successful FPS esport in history, which is Counter-Strike. Now, debatably, that's being taken over by Fortnite, but that's a whole other discussion. At least historically, Counter-Strike has been. So they're building a Counter-Strike-like game with the same type of theme. And then they're building a fighting game, so it's FGC, right? And then they're building an RPG. So Riot is telling you, based on the type of genre of games that they are making, that they're really interested in esports. And they already have a complete infrastructure to support leagues in all of these games. So it may be that the plan for Riot is to actually make a franchise league in every genre of game. So by 2020, they have a franchise league in Legends of Runeterra, and then they have a league in there's a tactical FPS, and then they have an FGC league too, of like 10 teams per league, and they build the same system that they've built for the LCS. And Riot is going to be able to make a decision on this, like they're gonna like a business decision better than I think anybody else, because they're going to have all the experience of running the LCS. And the LCS has been the most successful franchise to date in esports, which if you listen to a lot of the other talks that I do, that doesn't mean much, because there isn't really any franchise that's cash flow positive or even close to it. But these are all like really long plans, right? These are long-term plans. So 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line, if you really believe in esports as something that is going to grow a lot over the next like 5 to 10 years, then having a franchise league or having a major presence in all of these places is a really good idea. And Riot probably also understands that they're not going to hit all of these, that there's not going to be a game in all of these categories. So TFT, for example, when we did our first video on TFT, I made the case that TFT was really not going to be the game that most people thought it was going to be. So like a lot of people said that TFT was going to like take over Twitch, that it was going to be a competitor to Hearthstone. And it showed to me that the numbers just weren't there for it pretty early on in its development. I don't remember where I put this here. Yeah, in this video. And we talked about it again when we looked at the stats. And then TFT's viewership has been niche. It's been okay, but it hasn't been like insane. And I don't know if any of these games. I think what Riot is probably aiming for is they're going to want like one of these games to have a significant esports impact, and that game they're probably hoping is going to be Project A, but we don't really know if it is or not. And then like they're doing a lot of like media around League of Legends, and I think all this media and all this like sort of content expenditure, this is to solidify them as like the esports company. That's like what they're doing. I think their whole strategy their whole marketing strategy kind of revolves around being this sort of like official company that's pioneered esports, and they're kind of like becoming known for that. Whereas like Blizzard, on the other hand, like they're doing OWL and they're doing CDL, but those more feel like sort of inauthentic cash grabs, and there isn't like a world being built around them, right? And I think we're going to see more of that from Blizzard going forward. Whereas like Riot is solidifying themselves as sort of like the esports company, and all of these games are going to feed into their esports in some way. Another really interesting thing is that all of these, every one of these games is on the same client. So they are changing the client to have all of their games live in one place and have a central account, which is very smart. So there's been stores that are doing things like, so the Epic Game Store, the whole point of it was to get people to like use that platform and be on it, right? And Epic and Riot are taking the same strategy, which is like, we're going to make our game and have that be part of that platform, and then we're going to expand from there. The reason why like the Discord Nitro store didn't work is because there's no like reason to go to Discord to play or buy games, right? It's a totally different thing. Whereas like as like a business guy sitting in like a boardroom, you could maybe think that there is a reason for that, where it's like, oh yeah, like people on Discord, they come talk about games, but it's actually two separate things. Like nobody actually goes to Discord to play games. They go to talk about them, or they use it as like a third-party service to play games. So that's why that store didn't work. But Riot updating its client now to have this means that if you want to play any of their games, you also go through their portal. All of the monetization is the same. So the best decision that Riot did was they made TFT and they made League of Legends have the same type of currency. So there's no, whereas with like Blizzard with like OWL and like Diablo or whatever, these are Diablo 3 and OWL. Like these are two totally separate games, basically. In turn, like unless you wouldn't know that they are made by the same company, unless you like actually knew that. And the only thing that like really brings them together is Battle.net, and Battle.net's been doing a better job of trying to create like a cohesive client, but still there's a lot of stuff that's like separate. Whereas like Riot on the get-go, every launch of a game has that currency and this like consistency. So everything around Riot Games right now, it relies on one, creating a consistent brand across all titles, even if that title is an original IP. And I would say dominate or setting the standard to be the company for esports in every major genre. And this is Riot's business strategy insofar as I can ascertain. So one of the reasons why they might have decided on having a really big announcement like this for League 10 of just doing everything at once was because they wanted to put that strategy forward. And they might think that as more news comes out about this, it'll make up for the earned media that was lost. So, like, let's say that there's like a 100-point scale, okay? And 100 points means every gamer has heard of you and your thing. Maybe announcing everything was worth like 20 points. But if they had announced each game separately and allowed for earned media to like hit them, it might have been like 10 for like Legends of Runeterra and then like 5 or 10 for like Project A 3 months later. And then like 10 for like Project L and like 10 for like Project F, right? And maybe what would have happened is they could have gotten more total earned media than if they had announced everything at once. I think they could have, but I also think that the strategy to do this was for them to sort of say, okay, look, like this is where we're going. This is like the authority that we're going to become on this subject. And I think that's probably the reason why they did it this way. I think. So like what I'm saying is they know they're still going to get a lot of media attention as they continue to update these games, but the big reveals are done, right? Like we know these games are coming. So once Legends of Runeterra like releases as a beta in 2020, it's like, okay, that's there. And they can get some more earned media off of like the news in the games, but the big stuff is done now. And I don't think I would have done it this way, where I would have announced everything. I think I definitely not absolutely everything, because this is everything. But the timing was really good and bad at the same time. It was good because Blizzard is just in a really bad place right now. But if you really think about it, a lot of people are saying, oh, the timing of this is so good because Blizzard PR is bad. Well, think about this, right? The Fortnite announcement just happened. And that's hogging a lot of spotlight. And then also BlizzCon in 1 month. So you had a very large event that happened just before League 10 and just after it. That's not good. Someone in chat says Riot Games trending worldwide with like 400K mentions. Okay. Hashtag National Boss Day is trending worldwide right now. Like, who cares? It wasn't as big of an announcement as it could have been. What I'm saying is like you can actually it's like a drip faucet versus okay. How do I explain this? If you have a gallon of water to dole out, okay? And then you just splash the whole thing on someone and they get like really wet and then they dry off. That's the end of it, okay? But if you just take a cup out of it and you splash them every 10 days or so, it's going to have a greater impact on them because they're going to be like, 10 days from now, they're going to be like, damn it, that glass of water is coming again. That guy's going to splash me with the glass of water again. You see what I'm saying? So what I'm saying is like, there's two different types of distribution choices. You could distribute everything, that's all of your news, or you could distribute parts of information with the objective of having bigger impact over time. Chris, Counterlogic Gaming. Chris, hello. I should VIP you. I think the problem with announcing the other stuff individually is there isn't that much to show. So this gave them more of a statement about disrupting the industry. I agree. What I'm saying is, so here's what I'm saying, right? That's still under the assumption that this happened, that all this would have happened now. So you have enough information right now as a part of League 10 to announce Legends of Runeterra. You can show gameplay footage, you can open the beta, and that alone would have been enough for a 10th anniversary announcement. People would have been like, oh, that's really cool, a card game, okay? Then 6 months later, or a year later, or whatever, you have way more information on the tactical FPS. So then you announce that, and then you have another sort of like 10th year anniversary level event with the number of mentions that it got for the FPS. Then you do it again for the fighting game. Then you do it for the RPG. You see what I mean? So like you distribute this in a way that you have the content to back it up because you have time to do that. Would to me have been a better marketing move than releasing everything. But Chris is right. What the objective of Riot was in doing this, I believe, was to set the standard that they are going to be a serious game studio with a focus on esports. This also benefits teams a lot. And this is something that is really interesting because every team that is right now in the franchise league for League of Legends is going to have first pick onto all of these FPSs, all of these games, the FPS, the card game, or whatever. So once they do the franchise league for the rest of the teams, it's possible that you see a team like Counterlogic Gaming become a sort of like standard. And if Riot Games is becoming a standard in esports, it's going to take those teams with it, which is pretty cool. So that's sort of like a way to describe that is like Counterlogic Gaming becomes more like the Yankees or a sort of like dignified sports team. Then right now you have different teams competing in different leagues. And so what you're starting to see is a sort of kind of weird consolidation where OWL and CWL might have certain owners. And right now there's some cross-pollination between that and Riot Games. But Riot Games has different owners as well. So when you think about it, what'll end up happening is the same thing that happens in kind of like baseball versus basketball or whatever. So you'll have different ownership groups that are attached to different publishers. And in a very weird way, we're inevitably and invariably and just moving towards a ecosystem that follows sports a lot. Because let's say we have 10 teams in the LCS and they have certain owners. Those owners then transfer over to Legends of Runeterra Franchise League, Project A Franchise League, Project L. Then on the other side, you have Blizzard. You have 10 owners within CDL. They transfer over to whatever titles that Blizzard is going to do. The difference between these two leagues or these two ecosystems is I think that Riot's league is actually going to work and Blizzard is going to fail because Blizzard is too cash hungry and they're charging too much and their owners are not going to get an ROI and they're going to pull out. And we've talked about this in previous videos where I think that Blizzard is actually doing things so bad on an esports ecosystem level that they could potentially pull the whole industry out from under them with them. So they could take Riot. It's like a drowning victim, right? Like when you charge $35 million to $40 million for something that has just absolutely no ROI, it is like making you less than like $100,000 a year, and you can't expect to get that ROI within 5 years, much less even 10 years or whatever. Then you might create a system where you pull everyone under with you because everybody pulls out because there's just like it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make any sense to invest money in these things. So Blizzard is too greedy. It's just their huge problem. Activision, really, I should say, is too greedy. But they're almost one and the same. Whereas like League of Legends, they're approaching these things in an intelligent way. The franchise fee to get into a League of Legends spot, even now, is pretty reasonable. And you could actually justify an ROI over several years. The player salaries have gotten better, are still high. But like things are there's like a way to see in the future how esports could be a really profitable thing. I just think it's still a lot more years out than people realize. So we get all the work that Riot is doing is setting up for this. And I think they're going to come in at a place with all of these leagues that is way more reasonable than what Activision is doing. So if they can take whenever the bomb goes off from the CDL and the OWL leagues, and whenever it becomes apparent to those investors that those leagues don't make any sense, hopefully Riot's in a good enough place to sustain whatever hit to the market that does. And they probably will be. And they'll probably be supported by Tencent if they're not, and it'll be fine. So these are the real two objectives that I think that Riot has by doing this. And this announcement of having everything at once, this is really deliberate. Oh, I also didn't say one of the biggest things is that League of Legends is going to mobile, right? Along with TFT. So this is going to print money. This is going to have a massive, like if Riot Games was a public company and they announced that, and the only announcement they made for League of Legends was that it was going to mobile and console, I would 100% put a huge investment that day into Riot, because that is an insane, like they are going to print money. They're increasing their average lifetime value of a customer from like $100 to $150 to like $250 to $500. So they're actually doubling their profit for one of the most popular games. And I also think that every game they're making has the potential to be mobile. Like Legends of Runeterra, it looks like it could be a mobile game very easily. The FPS, maybe. The fighting game, maybe. For the fighting game and the FPS, it almost doesn't matter. But the card game, definitely. And the RPG could be as well. So when you're looking at mobile, one thing to understand is there's a concept called LVC, which is lifetime value of customer. Or it could be LTC, lifetime value of customer. So let's say that somebody like shops at like a hardware store. Maybe the lifetime value of your customer is like $25 to $40. Let's say that your and then like for chains like Walmart or something like that, it might be higher. So for this is basically like how much money is the average person that uses your product, right? So not the average person that buys something, but the average person that uses your product. That's really important to distinction. What are they worth? So for a PC game, right, like League, it might be between like $50 and $100. And League is actually quite a bit higher than most games because they monetize quite well. For a mobile game, it like starts at $250, can go up to like $500 plus. So the amount of money that you stand to make off of a customer, and again, this is anyone. So out of 10 people that download your game, this is what you could expect. All 10 to be worth. Some people won't buy anything at all, but most people will, and there'll be a lot of people that buy more than this which is like how an average is created. So what League of Legends is doing by making everything mobile is they are literally doubling the profit of all of their games, or maybe even higher. So this is a insane notion in terms of like all of the ways that they're going to be getting. Mobile is going to have crazy lucrative results for China and Tencent as well. Yeah, this isn't even considering the international markets where this is going to be way more accessible. Riot as a company with that decision alone will double its revenue, at least double, if not more. Someone says they have to remake League from scratch for mobile, higher costs when they do that. The amount of development costs will be nowhere even near what they will make as a result of bringing those it's not even close. Whatever it costs them in development, you could 10x the cost it's going to cost them in development, and it won't even come close to the profit they're going to make off of mobile. The lifetime value of customers is that high. So we can see that Riot Games is doing a lot of things right. So by moving everything under one client, right, they're creating consistency across titles. They're setting the standard to be a company in esports for every major game. They're increasing the lifetime value of their customers by introducing mobile sets. And they're also producing a sort of coherent world by doing documentaries, by doing lore books, by doing animated series. And what you're doing is you're creating a Riot Games customer. That's what you're doing. Now it's like, it's not going to just be, oh, I play League of Legends or I don't play League of Legends. So that's like the sort of distinction in the past couple of years of if you are a Riot Games customer or not. Now it's going to be, oh yeah, I don't play League, but I play TFT. But you log into the same client, you have the same currency, right? And like you're part of the same world. And I'll tell you in a minute why that's important. Oh, I don't play TFT and I don't play League, but I actually play Project A and I really like the FPS. You have the same currency, you log into the same client. Oh, I don't play Project A and I don't play League, but I play the fighting game. I love FGC, so I play that. You log into the same. You see what's happening? So what happens is this means that your customer is more likely to cross-pollinate into other games. So if a person likes card games, but they also like RPGs, they will be so much more likely to try your RPG because they're already invested, that you've already got them to download the client. You already have a direct call to action to them. They already have maybe 200 extra coins of currency, of Riot points or whatever, to be able to invest in their fighting game or whatever, or their RPG. And now you have a customer that is way more likely to transition across games because, and if you make a game in a genre, they're going to try that game first from you because they're already invested in your product. You already have them. You don't have to make them download something separate. You don't have to make them do something different. It's very easy for you to transfer over because you're already sort of a customer of Riot Games. So I would say that out of all game developers right now, after this announcement, in an incredible bout of irony, okay, from where we were 6 months ago with Riot may be one of the best positioned publishers out of anybody. because they're creating this coherent universe, and it's around the domination of esports. So it's like you would never imagine this to happen, but they are now creating an ecosystem where they could quite possibly be one of the top developers, if not like the top developer next to Epic, right? And Epic Epic really only has Fortnite, but Epic has a lot of time because they have an incredible amount of revenue. And they have the Epic Game Store, and Epic's pretty much killing it on any level. But it's possible that in the next 5 years, the contenders for like best publisher are Riot Games and Epic Games. And what a weird timeline that is. You know, what a strange timeline that is. So I wanted to talk about this because we've had, like, in the last week, we've had two of the most interesting moves in all of marketing happen. We had the Fortnite event, which we discussed in detail, and a lot of you liked that discussion. But and so Fortnite, the way that Fortnite is doing their stuff is like really different than the way that League is doing it. So talking about like the League 10 event and like what's going on with the way that they're creating their branding and the way they're building their world. I just, again, like I've given Riot a lot of trouble. I've probably been more critical of Riot than I've been of any other company, I think. And now that title has been given to Activision because Activision has managed to screw up even harder than Riot did over the last 5 years. It's unfathomable. Like Activision seems to be, I don't think there's one thing they're doing well. I can't point to a single thing. Their PR is horrific. Their esports is a joke and incredibly overvalued and threatens the entire industry. Their games are not even good. The only success they have is re-releasing stuff they've already done to people that have already played it but are willing to play it again in lieu of the fact that there's absolutely nothing else to play. That's it. So it's like the only success you have is success that you've already pre-capital, and we're going to do a whole talk about Blizzard. But if they don't get BlizzCon right, that's it, man. Like if this BlizzCon doesn't do something huge, it is going to be rough for that company in 2020. So Riot has consistently been making decisions on the back end to culminate in this announcement. And what's interesting, too, is they were willing to take the bad PR on a company side over the last 6 months, and they still had all of these cards that they could have used. So when the stuff went down about the Riot Games executive team and the PR stuff, they handled that professionally, and they said, okay, look, like we're updating our HR, we're getting new people in HR, we're redoing this, and it did get better, and there were people that came out from Riot and said this is getting better, and then they held on to all these cards for this big announcement to show, look, we are serious about being a publisher, we're serious about being an esports publisher, and our mission is to become the number one esports publisher in the world. And they're going to succeed at that mission. I think nobody is even close. I think Epic Games is amazing with what Fortnite is, but Fortnite is almost another creature in of itself. And that Fortnite is going to continue to be successful because of because of all the stuff that we talked about previously. But that Riot is really solidifying themselves as the esports company. And it's cool to see. It's really cool. You can call me a fan of Riot Games again. This League 10 announcement was really neat, and it got me super pumped about Riot Games, and I'm really excited to see where they're going. And here's the thing. I don't know if any of these games are going to be Fortnite level, right? And I don't even know if it matters that is the case. Like, Teamfight Tactics was exactly what we said it was going to be, right? We said it was going to be a niche game that was going to appeal to a certain group of people. But then beyond that, it wasn't going to be like the next Hearthstone or whatever. Maybe it doesn't need to be. If there's anything that Riot Games has learned over the course of 10 years, it's how to use esports to market a game, period. How to use esports to market a game. And I think they can do the same thing with their FPS and their fighting games and their RPGs. And they can use esports to create sort of really respectable followings for all of these games, provided that the games actually are good. That's a pretty big thing. And that's something that I didn't discuss. Maybe, we sort of talk about that or close with that. But one challenge that Riot Games is going to be having is they have no experience building any of these titles. So they're going to have to bring in some pretty good people from other games to be able to make these games good. It's going to be tough to do, I think. I think it's going to be hard to make a good FPS, a good fighting game, and a good RPG within the same studio and understand the elements of doing all those things. But if they can try it, they can reiterate on it, and they listen, maybe they'll do it. It seems like they did okay with TFT, though that wasn't that hard to duplicate. Legends of Runeterra. It seems like too early to get a good idea on this game. I'm not really into it, and I don't know why. I haven't put my finger on it. I need to play it, I guess, and kind of see. But it just doesn't seem like it doesn't have the same appeal to me as like MTG or anything like that yet. We'll have to see. Either way, that's not really important. What is important is like this strategy and what they're doing. I think Riot Games has set themselves up to be the premier esports organization in the next 5 to 10 years. And what they're doing to create a consistent brand across all their titles is super smart. That is where I'll leave it. I'm pretty proud of Riot Games. And hey, I mean, it's nice to see a company do something that I'm literally born of this company, right? Like in 2012, I was a full-time streamer on League of Legends, jungling. And then Alberto Crumbs and his girlfriend discovered my stream, told Dignitas about it. Riot came in separately. A bunch of rioters came in and actually played games with me because they thought I was cool. And then they told the team at League of Legends to feature me. David did this, Riot Freak. They did feature me. And then from there, it was history. And that was what got me into esports. That's what eventually got me to CLG. That's what got me to Dignitas. That's what got me into everything I do now. Like, this game is responsible for who I am. So it's really cool to see that Riot's doing well. I'm proud of them. And I want them to keep doing cool stuff. And I'm also happy that they're taking a lot of chances and they're taking a lot of risks and they're going into a lot of genres they might not be familiar with. I think it's all good. They're using their money in good ways. It's good stuff. So that's it. That's my